A corrupt cattle baron's hired thug brutally slapped a 72-year-old widow, knocking her to the floor in a packed saloon. The entire room just watched, frozen in fear, too afraid to say a single word. The thug laughed, thinking he was an untouchable king in his small frontier town. He believed his power was absolute. But he made one fatal mistake. He had no idea her son was a Texas Ranger, and that he and his trail partner were about to walk right through those swinging doors. Before we begin, tell us where you are watching from, and if this story touches your heart, please subscribe for more. The air in Copper Ridge, Texas carried the dry promise of approaching autumn. It was early September 1942, and the plains that stretched around the town were a dusty expanse of golden grass and weathered sage. A light breeze stirred up dust devils that danced across the main street before fading into nothing. The scent of mesquite and cattle was a constant companion. This was the peace Martha Callahan had been searching for. Martha, a woman in her late 70s with soft silver hair pinned neatly beneath a simple bonnet and eyes the color of a gentle prairie sky, pulled her faded shawl tighter around her shoulders. She was a widow, a woman who had navigated the storms of a long frontier life with a quiet grace that was often mistaken for fragility. But beneath the surface there was a core of resilient steel, forged in love, loss, and the steadfast raising of a remarkable son. That son, Wyatt, had recently purchased a beautiful ranch on the edge of Silver Creek, just outside of town, insisting she deserved a sanctuary away from the harsh memories of their old homestead. This extended visit was his gift, a place for her to breathe. She pushed open the doors of the Golden Spur Saloon, the hinges creaking to announce her arrival. The saloon was the heart of Copper Ridge, a weathered haven of scarred wooden tables, rough-hewn bar stools, and the comforting aroma of strong coffee, whiskey, and tobacco smoke. It was exactly the kind of place Martha loved, honest and unpretentious. Behind the bar, a young woman named Clara Hayes moved with an efficiency that belied her age. Clara, barely in her early 20s, had a sharp, observant gaze and a mane of dark curly hair tied back with a simple leather cord. She had grown up in Copper Ridge and understood its rhythms, both the gentle currents and the dangerous undertows. She offered Martha a quick, genuine smile. "Morning, ma'am. Just yourself today." "Just me," Martha confirmed, her voice soft but clear. "A table by the window if it's not too much trouble." "Not at all." As Martha settled into a chair near the dusty window, her gaze drifted to the scene outside. A young man, probably a traveling photographer, was setting up a box camera on a tripod across the street. This was Samuel Porter, a frontier photographer known for his Authentic West series. He was a bundle of optimistic energy with a bright smile and a worn leather vest. He adjusted his lens, hoping to capture the rustic charm of the saloon, the perfect image for his collection of frontier photographs. Martha's peaceful moment was shattered by a booming voice that seemed to suck the warmth from the room. Well, look what we have here. More city money gracing us with its presence." The voice belonged to Dusty Joe Harker. He was a large, imposing man in his 50s, a hired gun whose bulk was built more from whiskey and grievances than honest ranch work. His face was perpetually flushed, and his small, calculating eyes scanned the saloon as if he owned it. He wore a dusty trail coat and a sneer that seemed permanently etched onto his lips. He was sitting in a corner table with two other men, quiet followers who chuckled on cue. Martha chose to ignore him, turning her attention to the simple menu scratched on a chalkboard behind the bar. But Dusty Joe wasn't a man to be ignored. He heaved himself out of his chair, his heavy boots thudding on the wooden floor as he made his way over to her. The low hum of conversation in the saloon faltered and died. Everyone knew Dusty Joe. Everyone knew to stay out of his way. He stopped beside her table, casting a large shadow over her. "Don't see many of your kind in here," he said, his voice dripping with false friendliness. "Usually stick to those fancy tea rooms up on the hill." Martha looked up at him, her expression calm. "I find the coffee here is much better," she replied politely. Behind the bar, Clara's smile had vanished. Her jaw was tight. She knew exactly what this was. Dusty Joe Harker was the blunt instrument for Marcus Blackwood, the cattle baron trying to buy up the entire Creek territory. Dusty Joe's specialty was convincing reluctant sellers. Clara slowly reached under the bar, her fingers finding a small journal she kept for accounts. She propped it up discreetly, making mental notes of everything she was witnessing. This wasn't the first time she'd seen him bully someone, but this time felt different, more vicious. Dusty Joe's sneer widened. "Is that right? Well, enjoy it while you can." Some of us are trying to preserve what makes this town special, not turn it into some playground for rich folks who don't belong. I assure you, I have no intention of changing your town, Martha said, her voice remaining steady, though she could feel a knot of apprehension tightening in her stomach. She thought of her late husband, a man of immense kindness and quiet strength. He would have known how to handle a man like this, not with aggression, but with a firm, unshakable dignity that would make a bully feel small. She channeled that memory, that strength. "Oh, I think you do," Dusty Joe shot back, his voice rising, drawing the attention of everyone in the saloon, including Samuel outside, who now aimed his camera at the unfolding scene, intrigued by the drama. "I hear you're the one holding up progress over at the creek. Got a real nice offer for that property your son bought, but you're just too stubborn to see sense." So that was it. This wasn't a random act of hostility. It was targeted. It was about the ranch. Wyatt had warned her that the cattle baron was aggressive, but she hadn't expected this. "The ranch is not for sale," Martha stated, her tone final. "My son bought it for our family." Dusty Joe leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a menacing growl. "Your family? You mean the son who's never here? The one who drops a pile of money on a ranch and leaves his old mother here to be a thorn in the side of hardworking local folks?" He rested his thick, grease-stained knuckles on her table. "This is a small town, lady. We have our own way of doing things. We don't appreciate outsiders coming in, buying up prime land, and refusing to play ball. It messes with the natural order of things." Martha could feel the eyes of the other patrons on her. She saw fear in some, annoyance in others, but no one moved to intervene. They were trapped in the web of small-town politics, afraid of a man who held sway through intimidation and connections. She felt a profound sense of isolation, a feeling she hadn't known since the first few weeks after her husband passed. But she would not be cowed. "There is nothing natural about trying to bully a woman into selling her home," she said, her voice quiet but ringing with authority. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I would like to enjoy my coffee in peace." The defiance in her voice seemed to snap something in Dusty Joe. His face turned a shade darker, a deep blotchy red. The pretense of a conversation was over. This was raw intimidation now, and he was enjoying his audience. Dusty Joe Harker's face was a mask of pure rage. The quiet, unyielding dignity of the woman before him was an insult he couldn't tolerate. In his world, power was loud, boorish, and physical. Her calm was a language he didn't understand, and it infuriated him. Martha knew she could not win a battle of wills with such a man. There was no reasoning with him. Her only option was to remove herself from the situation. With a grace that defied the tension in the air, she stood, placing a few coins on the table to cover the coffee she would never drink. "I wish you a better day, sir," she said, her voice a soft murmur, and turned to leave. That was the final spark. Her refusal to engage, her calm dismissal of him as nothing more than an unpleasant interruption, sent Dusty Joe over the edge. He moved with surprising speed for a man of his size, stepping in front of her to block her path to the door. "You think you're better than me?" he roared, his voice echoing in the dead silent saloon. Spittle flew from his lips. "You waltz in here, look down your nose at us, and then just walk away?" Before Martha could react, he swept his thick arm across the small table. The heavy tin cup, half full of hot coffee, went flying. Martha gasped and flinched back as hot liquid splashed across the floor and the wall, a few scalding drops hitting the back of her hand. The sound of the cup clattering against the wooden floor was like a gunshot. The shock of the act, the sudden violence of it, made her stumble. For a moment, she was disoriented, her heart pounding in her chest. It was in that moment of vulnerability that Dusty Joe committed to his gamble. He saw her fear, and it fed the ugly fire inside him. He drew back his hand, the thick gold ring on his finger glinting under the lantern light, and swung. The sound of the slap was sharp, ugly, and final. It cut through the silence, a sound that would be seared into the memory of everyone present. Martha cried out, a small, sharp sound of pain and shock. The force of the blow wasn't overwhelming, but the surprise and imbalance sent her staggering backward. Her heel caught on the leg of a chair, and she fell, crumpling onto the cold, hard floor. A collective gasp went through the saloon. Patrons froze, drinks halfway to their mouths. Across the street, Samuel Porter's jaw dropped. His camera, still aimed at the saloon door, had captured the entire horrific sequence in perfect detail. Behind the bar, Clara Hayes felt a surge of cold fury. Her knuckles were white as she gripped the edge of the bar, her mind racing to figure out what she could do, how she could help. And then the saloon doors swung open. The man who entered was the physical opposite of Dusty Joe Harker. He was in his late 30s, dressed in a simple dark leather vest, worn denim pants, and sturdy riding boots. The clothes were ordinary, but they couldn't conceal the coiled power in his frame, the broad shoulders, the lean muscular build of a man whose body was a finely tuned weapon. He moved with an unnerving economy of motion, a predatory grace. His eyes, a deep piercing blue that held none of his mother's gentleness, swept the room and took in the scene in a fraction of a second. He saw his mother on the floor. He saw the overturned cup. And he saw Dusty Joe Harker standing over her, chest puffed out like a conqueror. This was Wyatt Callahan. At his side, a man with a weathered face and a tied-down holster stood silent and still. This was Cole Brennan, Wyatt's longtime trail partner and fellow ranger. Cole's hand rested casually near his revolver, his eyes scanning the room with the calm awareness of a professional gunfighter. Wyatt's gaze locked onto his mother. His expression didn't change, but a switch had been flipped. The calm rancher was gone. The Texas Ranger was in control. He issued a single low command to Cole. "Watch him." The words were barely a whisper, but Cole responded instantly. He shifted his stance, positioning himself between Dusty Joe and the door. His hand never moved to his gun, but the threat was unmistakable. "You will not leave until this is settled." Dusty Joe Harker, who had faced down angry cowboys and rival gunmen, froze. His bravado, so potent just a moment ago, evaporated in the face of the silent, lethal promise radiating from the two men. Wyatt ignored him completely. He walked forward, his steps silent and measured, and knelt beside his mother. "Mom, are you okay?" His voice was gentle, the harsh edge gone, reserved only for her. "Wyatt," she whispered, her hand going to her reddening cheek. "I'm all right, dear. Just startled." He helped her to her feet with an easy strength, his eyes scanning her for any injury. He saw the red mark on her cheek, the splash of coffee on her hand, and something cold and hard settled in his gaze. Once he was sure she was steady, he turned his full, undivided attention to Dusty Joe Harker. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The low, flat tone he used carried more menace than any shout ever could. "You just made a serious mistake." From a table in the back of the saloon, another man watched the scene unfold. Sheriff Vernon Kane, a man in his late 50s with a face weathered by sun and cynicism, slowly lowered his whiskey glass. He wore his badge with a lazy, comfortable authority, the silver star on his chest polished, but his demeanor suggesting he hadn't had to do any real law work in years. He'd been watching Dusty Joe's performance with a look of bored amusement. Dusty Joe was a useful tool, and the old woman had been a nuisance. But this arrival of this quiet, dangerous-looking man and his equally intimidating partner was an unplanned complication. The sheriff sighed. It seemed he would have to get involved after all. Not to arrest Dusty Joe, of course not, but to manage the situation, to contain the fallout. He slowly pushed himself out of his chair, adjusting the gun belt on his hips, and began to walk toward the center of the saloon, his face a mask of practiced official concern. Sheriff Vernon Kane ambled forward, his posture a study in practiced nonchalance. He approached the tense standoff not with urgency, but with the weary air of a man bothered by a stray dog. His eyes, however, missed nothing. He noted Clara's position behind the bar, the photographer with his camera across the street, and the unyielding posture of the stranger. "All right, folks, let's just calm it all down," the sheriff said, his voice a folksy drawl meant to soothe and take control. He directed a familiar nod at Dusty Joe. "Dusty Joe, you've been drinking this early?" "Sheriff, this ain't nothing," Dusty Joe said, seeming to find his footing at the arrival of an ally. "Just a little misunderstanding. This lady, I saw what happened," Wyatt cut in, his voice quiet but sharp enough to slice through the sheriff's feigned calm. He didn't look at the sheriff, keeping his focus entirely on Dusty Joe. Sheriff Kane finally turned his gaze on Wyatt. "And who might you be, son?" "He's my son," Martha said, her voice trembling slightly but firm. "Wyatt Callahan." "Wyatt Callahan," Wyatt supplied, still not breaking his stare. "Well, Mr. Callahan," the sheriff said, stepping between Wyatt and Dusty Joe, a subtle move to break the line of confrontation. "In Copper Ridge, we handle our own disagreements. No need for things to get out of hand. Why don't you take your mother on home, and we'll call it a day?" It was a dismissal, a clear attempt to sweep the assault under the rug. Wyatt recognized it instantly. He had seen the same tactic in corrupt border towns all over Texas. "This disagreement was a criminal assault," Wyatt stated flatly. and I expect a formal report to be filed." The sheriff's folksy mask tightened. A flicker of annoyance crossed his face. "Now listen here, son. I'm the law in this town, and I say what's what." It was a heated moment. No real harm done. Wyatt finally turned his head, his piercing blue eyes meeting the sheriff's for the first time. The sheriff felt an unexpected jolt, as if he were being assessed and found wanting by a predator. "My mother was knocked to the floor," Wyatt said, each word precise and cold. "There are at least a dozen witnesses, and that man," he nodded toward Dusty Joe, "is going to be arrested, or this will become a very different kind of problem." He gave a subtle signal to Cole, who shifted his stance slightly, his hand now resting openly on the butt of his revolver. The message was clear. Wyatt put a steadying arm around his mother's shoulders. "Let's go, Mom." He guided her toward the door, moving with a purpose that no one dared to challenge. As they passed the bar, he made brief eye contact with Clara, giving her a single, almost imperceptible nod of gratitude. Once outside in the dusty street, Wyatt settled his mother into the passenger seat of a sturdy buckboard wagon. He checked her cheek again, the red mark already beginning to darken. A cold, controlled fury simmered just beneath his calm exterior. He walked around to the driver's side, and before taking the reins, he pulled out a small leather case from his vest pocket. Inside was a silver star, engraved with the words Texas Ranger. He didn't put it on yet, but he held it for a moment, a reminder of what he represented. He climbed onto the wagon and clicked his tongue, guiding the horses away from the saloon. Behind them, the entire town of Copper Ridge watched in silence. Meanwhile, across the street, Samuel Porter was experiencing a photographer's dream. His hands were shaking with adrenaline. He knew with absolute certainty that he had just captured an image that would be talked about for years. He didn't hesitate. He packed up his camera, rushed back to his boarding room, and began developing the photograph immediately. He agonized over what to do with it for only a few moments before deciding. This image needed to be seen. He sent copies to newspapers in San Antonio, Austin, and Dallas. The accompanying note was simple: "Injustice in Copper Ridge. Elderly woman assaulted by hired thug while lawman watches." The effect was instantaneous. Within days, the photograph, a stark image of Martha on the floor and Dusty Joe standing over her, appeared on the front pages of major Texas newspapers. The caption read, "Shame of the Frontier." The public outrage was a tidal wave. Letters poured into governors' offices and ranger headquarters. Editorial columns called for justice. Veterans groups demanded action. Copper Ridge had become infamous overnight. In a lavish ranch house outside of town, Marcus Blackwood, a man in his late 40s with slicked back hair and an expensive suit that seemed out of place on the frontier, slammed his fist on his desk. Marcus was the architect of the Creek Territory land grab, a man who saw landscapes not as places of beauty, but as assets on a ledger. He was staring at the newspaper photograph on his desk, his handsome face contorted in a snarl of fury. "Idiot," he hissed, grabbing a messenger. "Get me Mayor Hollis." Now, a few miles away, Mayor Benjamin Hollis, a man in his early 60s whose polished, grandfatherly image concealed a core of pure greed, was in a town council meeting about street repairs. A messenger burst in, breathless. The mayor excused himself, stepping into his private office and reading the telegram that had just arrived from Blackwood. His face went pale. "Your man Harker is a liability," the telegram read. "He's on the front page of every paper in Texas. The woman's son is a ranger. Fix this, or I will make sure everyone knows whose incompetence cost us everything." Mayor Hollis felt a cold knot form in his stomach. He quickly found a copy of the newspaper. He watched the image, saw the slap, the fall, and the arrival of the quiet, dangerous man. He heard Dusty Joe's voice in his mind, loudly referencing the land deal. This was a disaster. Online and through telegraph networks, concerned citizens were already at work. Using city directories and cross-referencing business records, they had a name within hours: Dusty Joe Harker, known associate of Marcus Blackwood. Within another day, they had connected him to his primary employer, Marcus Blackwood of the Blackwood Cattle Company. And from there, it was a short leap to his most prominent political supporter, Mayor Benjamin Hollis, who had personally approved the land surveys and water rights for Blackwood's expansion. The names Dusty Joe Harker, Marcus Blackwood, and Mayor Benjamin Hollis began appearing in telegraph dispatches and newspaper editorials across Texas, right alongside calls for justice. The ripple had reached the shore, and it was about to crash down on them all. The meeting took place in the back room of the Silver Spur Hotel, a place smelling of old leather, cigar smoke, and unspoken agreements. This was Mayor Benjamin Hollis's unofficial office, a sanctuary of power far from the public eye of the town hall. Marcus Blackwood was already there, pacing in front of a large stone fireplace where a low fire crackled. He had ridden up from his ranch himself, his tailored suit looking absurdly out of place against the rough frontier backdrop. Sheriff Vernon Kane leaned against a wall, cleaning his fingernails with a pocket knife, the picture of bored indifference. Mayor Hollis entered and closed the heavy door behind him, shutting out the world. "The problem is contained," he announced, though his voice lacked conviction. Marcus Blackwood spun around. "Contained? Benjamin, your problem is in every newspaper from here to the Gulf Coast. My investors are demanding answers. They're seeing headlines linking my company to a violent assault. Contained is not the word I would use." "Dusty Joe is a fool," the mayor conceded, pouring himself a generous measure of whiskey from a decanter on a side table. "But he's our fool. Vernon has already had a word with him. He'll keep his mouth shut." The sheriff grunted his assent without looking up. "It's not about Dusty Joe keeping his mouth shut," Blackwood snapped, his voice sharp. "It's about the woman's son, Wyatt Callahan. My sources say the man is a Texas Ranger, active duty. Do you have any idea what that means? It means he's a professional problem solver, and we," he gestured around the room, "are now his problem." This was the core of their conspiracy, laid bare in the dim light. For 3 years, the three men had run Copper Ridge like their own private kingdom. Their plan was simple and brutally effective. Marcus Blackwood, with his deep-pocketed investors, identified prime land, especially the undeveloped territory around Silver Creek. Mayor Hollis would then use his political influence to rezone the areas, create bureaucratic roadblocks for existing owners, and approve Blackwood's expansion with suspicious speed. Their final and most crucial component was enforcement. That's where Sheriff Kane and men like Dusty Joe Harker came in. When a rancher refused a lowball offer, the harassment would begin. Sheriff Kane's deputies would suddenly start issuing fines for minor violations. Permit applications for simple property improvements would get lost in a sea of red tape. Then Dusty Joe Harker and his crew would escalate things. Accidental property damage, late-night disturbances, verbal intimidation. Most people, especially widows or small ranchers, would eventually break. They would sell cheap, just to escape the nightmare. The plan had been flawless. They had already acquired 70% of the creek territory. Martha Callahan's ranch was the final critical piece. It was the largest parcel with the best water access, the key to unlocking the entire multi-million-dollar cattle empire. Her stubborn refusal to sell, inspired by her son's wish for her to have a peaceful home, was costing them a fortune. The attack was supposed to be the final, terrifying push. It was supposed to show her she wasn't safe, that her peaceful retirement would be anything but. "The son is just one man," Sheriff Kane finally said, closing his knife with a snap. "He's visiting his mother. He'll make some noise, file a complaint, and then he'll have to ride back to wherever rangers go. In the meantime, I'll handle things here." "How, Vernon?" the mayor asked, a note of desperation in his voice. "The Texas Rangers might get involved. The state attorney general might take notice." "Let them come," the sheriff said with a lazy smile. "They'll find a simple assault case. Dusty Joe will get a fine, maybe a few days in a cell. I'll make sure the report is clean, just a local dispute that got out of hand. Nothing connecting it to anything bigger. As for the son, we'll just keep an eye on him. Make sure he understands he's a guest here, and that guests can be made to feel very unwelcome." Wyatt Callahan knew he was being watched. He had driven his mother back to the ranch, a beautiful property of rolling grassland and a sturdy ranch house made of timber and stone that looked out over the clear waters of Silver Creek. He had settled her into a comfortable chair with a cup of tea and a blanket, but his mind was already in mission mode. His visit was over. As he stood at the large window, seemingly admiring the view, his eyes were actually scanning the ridge line across the property. He had noticed it on the ride in, a rider on a dark horse, positioned just out of rifle range but close enough to observe. It wasn't a passing cowboy or a neighboring rancher. It was a watcher. "Cole Perimeter," he said quietly. Cole Brennan, who had been sitting on the porch cleaning his revolver, rose without a sound. He moved to his horse, swinging into the saddle with the ease of a man born to it. He rode out, not like a casual visitor, but like a scout, using the cover of the creek bed and scattered cottonwoods to sweep the property line in a wide, silent circle. Wyatt went to his saddlebag. From it, he pulled not personal belongings, but a series of small, practical items. He moved through the house with practiced efficiency, checking sight lines from windows, noting weak points in the doors. He retrieved a Winchester rifle from his gear and placed it within easy reach near the front door. He made sure his Colt revolver was loaded and his knife was sharp. His peaceful family ranch had just become a defensive position. He sat down across from his mother, his demeanor calm and reassuring. "Mom, I need you to stay inside for a while. Keep the doors locked. Don't answer for anyone but me or Cole." Martha looked at her son. She saw the quiet intensity in his eyes, the subtle shift in his posture. She had seen it before, in the rare moments between his ranger assignments, when the weight of his hidden work would briefly surface. She didn't know the details of his cases, only that they were dangerous and important. She knew he was a protector. "Wyatt, what's happening?" she asked, her voice steady. "The men who sent that thug to the saloon," he said. "They're not going to stop. The photograph going public has made them desperate. They're going to try to intimidate us into silence." He leaned forward. "But they've made a critical mistake. They think they're dealing with a scared old woman and her visiting son. They don't know who we are. They don't know that we don't intimidate." He gave her a small, confident smile, a smile that said, "I have this under control." "They wanted a war over this piece of land," he said, his voice dropping to a low, determined whisper. "They're about to get one." The viral photograph was a fire, and Mayor Benjamin Hollis's first instinct was to stamp it out with brute force. His strategy, concocted with Sheriff Kane in the smoky back room of the hotel, was twofold: discredit the source and silence the witnesses. The first target was Clara Hayes. She was in the middle of her afternoon shift, the saloon still buzzing with gossip about the morning's events, when her manager, a perpetually nervous man named Howard, called her into his tiny, cluttered office. Howard was a man who lived in fear. Fear of losing customers, fear of the town council, and most of all, fear of upsetting powerful people like the mayor. "Clara," he began, avoiding her eyes and shuffling papers on his desk. "The owner got wind of the incident this morning. And the way you were talking about it to folks, I've been told your continued employment here reflects poorly on the saloon's reputation." He swallowed hard. "I have to let you go. Your final wages are here." Clara took the small envelope without a word. She wasn't surprised, just angry. This was how power worked in Copper Ridge. A quiet word from the mayor, a veiled threat, and a good person was out of work. She looked at Howard, a man she'd known for years, and saw not a boss but a coward. "You know what you're doing is wrong, Howard," she said quietly. "It's just business," he whispered, turning back to his paperwork, unable to face her. The second target was Samuel Porter. Samuel was on a creative high. His photograph was being published everywhere. Newspapers were paying him for copies, and he felt like a real journalist. He spent the afternoon writing letters to editors, feeling the satisfaction of exposing injustice. As evening fell, he returned to his small rented room at the boarding house, whistling, dreaming of the career-making opportunities this story would bring. The first thing he noticed was the door. It was slightly ajar, the wood around the lock splintered and broken. A cold dread washed over him, extinguishing his earlier excitement. He pushed the door open. The room was a mess, but not from a simple robbery. His clothes were thrown about, his bag overturned. But the thieves had only been interested in one thing. On the floor, in the center of the small room, lay the shattered remains of his camera. The lens was smashed, the wooden box crushed. His glass plate negatives had been pulled from his storage case and shattered, their images destroyed forever. It wasn't theft. It was a message. It was a complete and utter annihilation of his work. He sank onto the edge of the bed, his hands shaking. Most of his work was on those plates. His entire collection from this trip. He felt a wave of nausea. This wasn't some random break-in. This was professional. This was a warning delivered with brutal efficiency by someone who wanted to make sure he understood the stakes. He thought of Sheriff Kane's lazy smile in the saloon. This had his mark all over it. In a sprawling, tastefully decorated ranch house on the wealthiest hill overlooking Copper Ridge, Elizabeth Hollis watched the evening gathering at the town hall through her window. Elizabeth was the mayor's wife, a woman of quiet elegance and refined beauty. In her youth, she had been vibrant and idealistic, but 25 years of marriage to Benjamin Hollis had slowly eroded her spirit, replacing it with a carefully maintained facade of serene composure. She had long known about her husband's corrupt dealings, turning a blind eye for the sake of peace, for the comfortable life he provided. But lately, the compromises had begun to taste like poison. She had seen the photograph in the newspaper. She saw the raw violence in dusty Joe Harker's face. She saw Martha Callahan, a woman her own age, falling to the floor. And in that moment, something inside her broke. This wasn't about land deals or politics anymore. This was about cruelty. It was about the ugly, rotten core of the man she had married. Just then, her husband walked into the room, loosening his tie. "Ridiculous, isn't it?" he said, gesturing vaguely. "The whole territory in an uproar over a saloon spat. I've already taken care of it. The girl at the saloon is gone, and the photographer has been discouraged." He said it with such casual arrogance, such a complete lack of remorse, that Elizabeth felt a chill run down her spine. He wasn't just corrupt. He was a monster who felt nothing. She waited. She waited until he was in his study, the sound of him pouring a drink masking any noise she might make. Then, with her heart pounding in her chest, she walked into his private office. It was his sanctuary, a room of dark wood, leather-bound ledgers, and secrets. Behind a large painting of a longhorn steer was a wall safe. She knew the combination. She had watched him open it 100 times. Her fingers, cold and trembling, turned the dial. Right 18, left 42, right 9. The safe clicked open. Inside was his insurance policy. There were several leather-bound ledgers filled with his meticulous handwriting, detailing every bribe paid, every kickback received. There was a stack of signed documents, contracts with Blackwood, that outlined the illegal land scheme. And there was a single oilskin pouch containing photographs of meetings, letters, and a detailed map showing every property they had targeted. With shaking hands, she took it all. She carried it to her own small sewing room at the other end of the house. She wrapped everything carefully in cloth, then placed it in a basket beneath her sewing supplies. Just as she finished, she heard his footsteps in the hall. He walked past her room without stopping, heading to bed. Elizabeth leaned against the door, her legs weak with relief. He was wrong. It wasn't over for him. It was just beginning. Clutched in her hidden basket was enough evidence to burn his entire world to the ground. The message came in the late afternoon. Martha was sitting by the large window overlooking the creek, a book open in her lap, though she hadn't turned a page in an hour. The ranch, which Wyatt had turned into a fortress of quiet vigilance, felt both safe and confining. There was a knock at the door. Wyatt answered it, his hand resting casually on his revolver. It was a young Mexican boy, perhaps 10 years old, holding a sealed envelope. "For Sonora Callahan," the boy said in accented English. "From Sonora Hollis." Wyatt took the envelope, flipped the boy a coin, and watched him ride away on a small pony. He brought the letter to his mother. Martha opened it carefully. The handwriting was elegant, feminine. "Mrs. Callahan, my name is Elizabeth Hollis. I am the mayor's wife. I realize this is a terribly forward request, but I was hoping you might be able to meet me. I feel I owe you a personal apology for what happened at the saloon, for the inhospitable welcome you've received in our town. There is an old mission chapel, San Miguel, on the edge of town. It's always quiet. In 1 hour. I wouldn't ask if it weren't a matter of the utmost importance. Yach." Martha read it aloud to Wyatt. His face hardened immediately. "No, it's too risky. It could be a trap. It could also be a cry for help," Martha countered, her gaze unwavering. She sounded desperate, Wyatt. Not threatening. Sometimes you have to take a calculated risk to find an ally. Wyatt saw the steel in his mother's eyes and knew he couldn't argue. He had inherited his resolve from her. "All right," he conceded. "But you're not going alone. I'll follow. I'll be out of sight, but I'll be there. If anything feels wrong, you turn around and walk away. Understand?" San Miguel was a simple adobe chapel set back from the road amidst a grove of ancient cottonwood trees whose leaves rustled in the afternoon breeze. It was a place of peace, a stark contrast to the ugliness that had infected the town. Elizabeth Hollis was already there, sitting in a front pew, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She looked smaller and more fragile than Martha had imagined, a woman drowning in the consequences of her husband's choices. She wore a simple dress and a shawl, no jewels, no pretense. Martha entered quietly, her footsteps echoing softly on the stone floor. She sat down in the pew behind Elizabeth, leaving a respectful distance. "Mrs. Hollis." Elizabeth turned, her eyes red-rimmed, but her expression resolute. "Thank you for coming, Mrs. Callahan. Please call me Elizabeth." She looked around the empty chapel. "I chose this place because I need to confess." She took a deep, shaky breath. "My apology is sincere, but it's not why I asked you here. I came to give you a weapon." From beneath her shawl, she produced the wrapped bundle. She held it out, her hand trembling. "My husband," she began, her voice low and intense, "has gone too far. For years, I told myself the deals he made were just frontier politics, the price of progress. But what I saw in that photograph, what his man did to you, it wasn't politics. It was evil. He is destroying this town, hollowing it out from the inside for profit." Martha looked at the bundle, then back at Elizabeth's face. She saw not deceit, but a profound and painful sincerity. This was the act of a woman who had reached her breaking point. "Why give this to me?" Martha asked, her voice a gentle prompt. "Why not take it to the territorial marshal?" Elizabeth gave a short, bitter laugh. "Sheriff Kane is my husband's puppet. He enforces my husband's will. Any evidence I gave him would disappear, and I would likely have a tragic accident soon after." She leaned forward, her eyes pleading. "I'm giving it to you because of your son. My husband and his partners, they understand bullies and money and threats. They don't understand men like Wyatt. They are terrified of the world he represents, a world where there are rules they can't bend and consequences they can't buy their way out of." She pressed the bundle into Martha's hands. The weight of it felt impossibly heavy. "Everything is on there," Elizabeth whispered. "The ledgers, the contracts, the documented threats. Enough to put them all away for a very long time. I trust you, and by extension your son, to get this into the hands of people who are beyond my husband's reach." Martha closed her hands around the bundle. She understood the immense risk Elizabeth was taking. This was not just an act of conscience. It was an act of profound courage. "You are a very brave woman, Elizabeth." "No," Elizabeth said, standing up, a single tear tracing a path down her cheek. "I am a coward who has stayed silent for too long. I pray I am not too late." With that, she turned and walked quickly out of the chapel, leaving Martha alone in the silence with the key to Copper Ridge's salvation. When Martha returned to the ranch, Wyatt was waiting by the door, his posture tense. Cole stood nearby, rifle in hand. They both relaxed slightly when they saw she was unharmed. "Are you okay? What happened?" Instead of answering immediately, she walked to the dining table and placed the bundle in the center. She unwrapped it carefully. "Elizabeth Hollis gave me this." Wyatt looked from the documents to his mother's serious expression. "She says it's everything," Martha explained. "Proof of the entire conspiracy. She believes the local law is compromised and that only you would know how to get it to the right authorities." Wyatt approached the table, examining the ledgers as if they were explosives. He recognized the gravity of the moment. This evidence had just transformed their defensive posture into an offensive operation. Martha had not just met with an ally. She had secured the critical intelligence that could win the war. He felt a surge of pride in her quiet strength and sharp judgment. She was every bit the warrior he was, just in a different arena. He opened the first ledger. The pages were filled with meticulous handwriting, columns for dates, names, and payment amounts. He saw names he recognized: Dusty Joe Harker, several town council members, next to figures that were clearly bribes. He found contracts showing properties sold by harassed families to shell companies for fractions of their value. The shell companies were all owned by Marcus Blackwood. He sat back, a slow breath escaping his lips. It was all there. A systematic criminal enterprise laid bare. He looked at his mother, his expression grim but resolute. She was right. This is everything. He walked to where his saddlebag hung and retrieved a leather case. Inside was his silver Ranger star. He pinned it to his vest for the first time since arriving in Copper Ridge. Then he picked up a pencil and paper and began writing a formal report. When he finished, he sealed it in an envelope along with a list of the key evidence. "Cole," he said, "ride to the nearest telegraph office outside of town. Send this directly to Ranger headquarters in Austin and to the Territorial Attorney General's office. Request immediate federal jurisdiction and a task force. Tell them the local law is compromised and this needs to be a top-down operation." Cole took the envelope, gave a single sharp nod, and was on his horse within minutes, riding hard into the gathering dusk. Wyatt turned back to the documents, his mind already planning the next moves. The evidence was secured. The message was sent. Now they had to hold their ground until reinforcements arrived. Outside, the sun was setting over Silver Creek, painting the sky in shades of orange and crimson. The ranch was quiet, but it was the quiet before the storm. The arrival of the Texas Rangers was not a thunderous charge. It was a quiet, methodical dawn. 3 wagons, unmarked but carrying men with unmistakable authority, rolled into Copper Ridge just as the first pale light of morning broke over the eastern plains. They didn't announce themselves. They didn't need to. Their silent, purposeful advance was more intimidating than any fanfare could be. The lead wagon pulled up to the sheriff's office. A man in a dark suit and black hat stepped down. He was in his 50s with a weathered face, a thick mustache, and eyes like cold steel. This was Captain James Thornton of the Texas Rangers, a man known for his meticulous attention to justice and his utter intolerance for corruption. Behind him came 6 more Rangers, all armed, all moving with the synchronized efficiency of a military unit. Captain Thornton walked directly into the sheriff's office without knocking. Sheriff Vernon Kane was enjoying his morning coffee, his feet propped on his desk, when the door opened. He slowly lowered his feet, a look of annoyance on his face. "Well now, you fellows are a long way from Austin. What can I do for the Rangers today?" Thornton didn't waste time with pleasantries. He placed a warrant on the desk. "Vernon Kane, you are under arrest." The sheriff actually laughed, a short, barking sound. "Arrest? For what?" "Keeping the peace in my town. For conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and multiple violations of territorial law," Thornton stated, his voice as cold and hard as iron. "This town was a criminal enterprise, and you were its chief enforcer." The color drained from Kane's face. The word conspiracy was a death knell. He knew what it meant. He looked from Thornton to the 2 stone-faced Rangers flanking him. The lazy confidence that had been his trademark for 20 years dissolved into raw panic. "This is a mistake," he blustered, standing up. "You have no jurisdiction here without." "We have a territorial warrant, Sheriff," Thornton said, cutting him off. "And as of this moment, your jurisdiction is limited to a jail cell." He nodded to his men. "Take him." The spectacle of Sheriff Vernon Kane being led out of his own office in handcuffs, his face a mask of disbelief and terror, brought the town of Copper Ridge to a dead stop. People came out of their shops and homes, watching in stunned silence as the symbol of corrupt, untouchable power was stripped of his authority and led away like a common criminal. The second arrest happened simultaneously at the mayor's residence. Mayor Benjamin Hollis was in his study, staring at an empty whiskey glass, when he heard the heavy knock at the door. He knew. Somehow he knew. When he opened the door, 4 Rangers stood there, their expressions impassive. "Mayor Hollis, we have a warrant for your arrest." He didn't resist. He didn't run. He simply nodded, as if he'd been expecting this moment for years. As they let him out, he saw his wife standing in the doorway of her sewing room. Their eyes met. She didn't look away. She didn't apologize. She simply watched as the consequences of his choices finally caught up with him. The final arrest happened at the Blackwood Ranch. Marcus Blackwood was already packing when the Rangers arrived. He'd planned to flee to Mexico, where his money could still buy him freedom. But Captain Thornton had anticipated this. Rangers had been positioned on every road out of town since before dawn. When they found him, he was in his stable, trying to saddle a horse himself, something he clearly had little practice doing. "Going somewhere, Mr. Blackwood?" Thornton asked. Blackwood spun around, his expensive clothes now dusty and disheveled. "You have no right." "We have every right," Thornton interrupted. "You're under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, extortion, and about a dozen other charges. Your empire is over." As they led him away in handcuffs, Blackwood looked less like a cattle baron and more like what he truly was, a common thief who had finally been caught. The weeks that followed the arrests were a strange, quiet time in Copper Ridge. The storm had passed, leaving behind a landscape that was both shattered and cleansed. The Ranger presence, once a small army, had dwindled to an administrative team working out of the sheriff's office, documenting evidence and interviewing witnesses. The territorial government moved quickly to prevent chaos. They appointed an interim town administrator, a sharp, competent woman in her 50s named Sarah Mitchell. Miss Mitchell had a reputation as a rebuilder, a specialist in municipal recovery who was dispatched to frontier towns in crisis. She had a calm, no-nonsense demeanor and an air of unimpeachable integrity that was exactly what the wounded town needed. One of her first official acts was to reinstate Clara Hayes, offering her not just her job back, but the position of saloon manager. Clara, stunned but resolute, accepted immediately. The Golden Spur Saloon, the scene of the initial crime, became the first symbol of the town's recovery, a place where integrity was now served alongside the whiskey. Wyatt and Martha, who had planned to leave once the immediate threat was gone, decided to stay a while longer. Their quiet visit had become something else entirely. They felt a sense of responsibility, a connection to the community they had inadvertently helped save. At Miss Mitchell's request, Martha, with her quiet wisdom and unshakable moral compass, agreed to co-chair a new citizen council tasked with ensuring transparency in all future town business. The night of the town meeting, the community hall was packed. There was a palpable tension in the air, a mix of anxiety, grief, and a fragile, flickering hope. Miss Mitchell ran the meeting with cool efficiency, laying out a clear plan for new elections, financial reforms, and community-led development. Then, halfway through the meeting, the back doors opened and Dusty Joe Harker walked in. A wave of silence washed over the hall. He was thinner, his face pale and drawn. He was no longer the swaggering bully from the saloon, but a humbled man who looked as if he were carrying the weight of his sins on his shoulders. He walked slowly up the center aisle, not to the stage, but to a speaker's podium set up for public comments. He stood there for a long moment, looking out at the faces of his neighbors, faces filled with contempt, anger, and suspicion. He cleared his throat, his voice rough and unsteady. "My name is Dusty Joe Harker," he began, his voice cracking, "and I have no right to ask for your forgiveness. What I did, there's no excuse for it. I was a bully. I was a coward. I let greed and resentment turn me into a monster." He looked directly at the front row where Martha and Wyatt sat. "Mrs. Callahan, Mr. Callahan, I am so sorry for what I did to you. I attacked you, ma'am, because I was told to, because I thought it was the easy way, but mostly because I was weak. I was afraid of the changes happening in our town, and instead of facing them with courage, I chose to face them with hate." Tears were now streaming down his weathered face, and he didn't bother to wipe them away. "I have cooperated fully with the Rangers," he continued, his voice growing stronger with conviction. "I've told them everything I know about everyone involved. I'll take whatever sentence they give me. But that's not enough. That's just punishment. It doesn't fix anything." He took a deep breath. "So starting tomorrow, my work crew will be offering our services free of charge to every single family that was harassed or targeted by Blackwood's scheme. If your fence was broken, we'll fix it. If your property was damaged, we'll repair it. I'll use every dollar I have left to try and undo some of the damage I helped cause." The hall was utterly silent. No one had expected this. It was more than an apology. It was an act of restitution. "That's all I have to say," Dusty Joe said, his shoulders slumping. "I'll leave you folks in peace now." He turned to walk away, but Wyatt's voice, calm and clear, stopped him. "Mr. Harker." Dusty Joe froze, turning back, his face a mask of dread, expecting a final damning condemnation. Wyatt stood up. He did not look angry. He looked assessing. "Your apology is a start," he said, his voice carrying through the hall. "Your actions will determine if it's a genuine one. This town doesn't need more division. It needs people willing to rebuild what was broken." He looked at his mother, who gave him a small, affirming nod. "My mother and I," Wyatt continued, "accept your offer to help this community heal. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was something more important. It was a chance. It was an acknowledgement that even the worst among them could choose a different path." A ripple of applause started in one corner of the room, then spread, hesitant at first, then growing stronger. It was not for Dusty Joe the bully, but for the possibility of redemption. In the days that followed, the town truly began to change. Dusty Joe was true to his word. His wagons became a common sight as his crews repaired damaged property, their work a quiet, daily apology. Wyatt found himself an unlikely community figure, his quiet strength a source of reassurance for many. Cole, his trail partner, became equally respected, teaching young men how to properly handle firearms and horses, skills that the frontier demanded. One evening, as the sun set behind the plains, painting the sky in fiery strokes of orange and purple, Wyatt and Martha sat on the porch of the ranch house. The air was cool, and the only sound was the gentle murmur of Silver Creek in the distance. "You know," Martha said, a soft smile on her face, "this wasn't exactly the peaceful ranch visit you promised me." Wyatt looked at her, his expression gentle. "No," he admitted. "It wasn't. You were wonderful, Wyatt," she said, placing her hand on his. "You protected all of us." "Protecting you is always my mission, Mom," he replied quietly. "That never changes, no matter where we are." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the first stars appear in the darkening sky. The ranch on Silver Creek was no longer just a property on a map. a point of contention. It was home. It was the place where a family had stood their ground, where a community had found its courage, and where, after a long and painful storm, a new dawn had finally broken over Copper Ridge. If this story of courage, faith, and redemption touched your heart, please help us spread this light to others. Share this video with someone who needs a message of hope. Subscribe to our channel for more stories that honor integrity and uplift the human spirit. And please comment below which character's quiet strength inspired you the most. Was it Martha's gentle defiance, Wyatt's protective calm, or Elizabeth's brave decision to do what was right? We pray that God blesses every single one of you watching. We pray that He gives you the strength to stand firm in your values and the courage to be a protector for those in need. If you believe that good will always triumph over greed and that light will always scatter the darkness, please share your faith with us by writing Amen in the comments below. Thank you for being a part of our community. Be safe and be well.